and welcome to another fabulous episode of Thyroid Refresh TV, a podcast dedicated to helping you live a thyroid healthy lifestyle. We're so glad to be back with you again. I'm Dana Bowman.
And I'm Jenny Mahar, and we are the dynamic duo behind Thyroid Refresh and Thyroid 30. And we're thrilled to be here today with Dr. Perry Nickelston to talk about all things chronic pain, wellness, how we can, reclaim our lives from chronic pain. So welcome, Perry. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for having me. I'm coming all the way from northern New Jersey outside New York City.
How's the weather?
It's actually getting warmer, which is really nice. Yeah. So it's a good feeling. It's amazing how much when you change that environment of the weather, how much it can change your overall physical and mental and emotional outlook on life, right?
Oh, it's incredible. Just to jump in really quick, I moved here from Colorado Springs, and I think supposedly Colorado has the most sunny days. I've read that lots of different places, and you don't really think about it, but where I'm at in Asheville, it's been the rainiest year they have, like the second rainiest year they have on record. And so It's very cloudy and rainy. And I mean, I can really feel it. I can tell. I walk around more cranky and more moody and less motivated. I mean, it's definitely one of those, you want to go outside, deal breakers. I'm like, no, no, I don't. And Jenny's in the snow, right?
Yes, it's snowing here right now.
That's Montana, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And, we do our Thyroid 30 wellness adventures seasonally. And so it's always interesting to see how unique each season, it comes with its own challenges, right? Yeah.
It does. Well, it's interesting because a couple of things change with the weather. You change the barometric pressure for your body, and that makes a difference on your level of pain and discomfort. So some people actually do much better when they change their zip code. I learned from an individual years ago, and he had a great phrase that said zip code trumps genetic code, which means that
I love that.
Yeah. So, your environment, your external environment and your internal environment, right? That can determine whether you flip a genetic switch to turn something on or turn something off in your body. They call that epigenetics, that you might be familiar with or have talked about previously, or your listeners, if they suffer from thyroid issues or autoimmune issues, they probably come across that term. And, that's one of the factors that they mean. Like, you can remove yourself from where you are, and then people automatically say, is this crazy? But I feel so much better. But it can also go the other way. They go, I moved and now I feel terrible. So that's a huge factor. And some people have to alter their whole life in order to get their health back.
Right. And, we have talked about epigenetics quite a bit. And that's so fascinating that you mentioned that. I hadn't really thought of our zip code, our locale, the climate we live in. It makes total sense, but that would be a huge factor in triggering certain genetic predispositions, right?
And also what you eat and locally, because it just makes sense. You're living in Asia. Mm-hmm. What they eat and what is available to them is what their body chemistry and gut is kind of made of. And then you fly in mango from, wherever. And that's not something they're used to, or whatever, just as an example. And it makes sense how you should kind of eat local and eat where you live, or that's kind of what we're made up of. So if you throw something else into the works, it can turn something on, or and so it's very interesting how that works. I lived in Costa Rica for a while, and they eat beans and rice, and it's a staple for them. And so for me and my kids, beans and rice isn't really a big staple, and it's not really good for me. I've had some testing done and things, and so it's just interesting. I lived there, so I ate more than I would have, but it's interesting how you put someone someplace else, and you really shouldn't be, you shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, that's a really brilliant observation, honestly, because it really does make a difference in relationship to where you were born and where you've lived and culturally, because like you mentioned before, you can have a food that is inherently known as, well, this is a healthy food, and you would think it would be good for everyone. But that's not necessarily the case, because it's how that particular individual reacts to that food, and how you live and your relationship to the equator makes a difference as well. They talk about that when I looked at the gut microbiome, right? The gut, because if you have an autoimmune disease or a thyroid issue, you got a gut problem, and you need to look at the microbiome. And it's nice to see that science and medicine are finally catching up to that. And they say that, microbiome are very specific to like a culture or to a diet or where somebody lives. And just because a bacteria is good for this particular group doesn't mean that if I put that in your gut, that it's going to make you healthy as well. Sometimes it can actually make you worse, because you just don't have a foundational system in order to be able to tolerate that. So that's one thing that I try to teach people, is that you can't give a blanket recovery program to every single person. There is no one, at least how I'm looking at it, what I do, there's no one quick fix solution for a thyroid. You can't give the same one to everybody, because how they got to that point, and it's any illness, not just the thyroid, how they got to that point is very unique to them based on their life story, which I call their life load. Your life load has contributed to where you are now. And I need to really look at that piece by piece, going all the way back to when you were actually born, that far back. Even before you were born, sometimes knowing what your environment was like for your mother, physically and emotionally as well. That can make an impact on you, because one of the most traumatic experiences you're ever going to go through in your life, but you just don't necessarily remember consciously, is the very act of being born.
Right.
Right. That's so, yes, like amen to all of that. This is so much of the work we do as well. And, we use the term bio-individuality a lot, and it's tricky, because people come to us and they say, well, what should I eat if I have thyroid disease and I want to feel better? What should I eat? Well, there are some templates you can start with that are less inflammatory, but ultimately the goal is figuring out what works for you as an individual. And that is a process that takes time. There isn't a quick fix. There's not you can't even really put a price tag on it. You can't purchase that for someone. They have to really be committed to figuring out what works and what doesn't for their individual body. Because yes, as you said, we aren't cookie cutter people, right? We don't fit into those templates always. But before we get too much further, we're so curious to know more about you, and you've had your own thyroid issues and have your own story around that. So can you tell us?
And before that, even, I just want to read a quick bio to introduce you to our listeners, just really quick before you start on your history. Perry Nickelston is a chiropractic physician with primary focus on performance enhancement, corrective exercise, and metabolic function nutrition, and trained from the American College of Addictional and Compulsive Disorders, and so many other things. He's got so many letters behind his name. He's the founder of StopChasingPain.com, Functional Health Solutions, and Pain Laser Center, and just so much more. You can check out his bio, because it is just long and diverse. And we are so glad to have you to talk about a wide range of things today.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Well, I try to be forever a student, right? It's a nonstop process of learning. And most of the lessons that come in life, right, are through your own suffering. That's a big motivator to learn. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey to what brought me here today. I got into chiropractic because I suffered a low back injury. So it was more of a musculoskeletal type of injury. And I was a bodybuilder for many, many years, and chiropractic really helped me. So I said, that's kind of great stuff. I'd like to do that myself. And I did, but it wasn't until I got out and I started to practice that I ended up being diagnosed with having thyroid cancer. Woke up one day and saw this big giant mass on the bottom of my neck, and I'm like, okay, that's not good. And then went and got it checked out, and then ended up being malignant. And then when they were in there, they had to make a call on whether they wanted to take the whole thing out or not, which they did. And it spread to a majority of the lymph nodes in my neck as well. So they had to take out a lot of that, which caused some issues later down the line of why I got into the lymphatic system quite a bit, which I know we're going to discuss. But it's interesting, you know, I had the thyroid taken out and then I just went on the thyroid medication, but I never really thought anything more about it at the time. I just went back to my normal musculoskeletal type of treatments. And then as the years progressed, I just slowly got adapted to feeling awful. Like you forget what good feels like. So you just kind of accept what you got. And so I would be tired. I would be fatigued. I suffered a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. I went on a lot of different types of antidepressant medications. And I just was in a bad spot. And it's just dealing with it. But then it progressively got worse with my body just kind of spiraling more out of control. And then I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. They didn't give it a name because they honestly don't have one for it. It's just like, okay, well, we can't really find what's going on. So we're just going to tell you that all of a sudden one day your body just decided to attack itself. And then there you go. And I was like, that's not an acceptable answer for me. So then, you know, I got more into investigating, wow, this stuff happened, and then began to rebuild myself back up. I'm sure there are many of the things that we're going to discuss in here today, but it's only when I began to do that that I looked way back, further back, and say, you know what? That cancer thing was a big sign of this beginning process that was almost 20 years ago. So all these things that all of a sudden like come out of nowhere, they take decades most of the time to build up or manifest for people. It's a slow process. That's why they call it a lifestyle disease, not an infectious type of disease. And so my approach to, I don't like to use the word cure because I don't think there's a cure for anything. There's only management, and the management comes from your habits and your behaviors, right? So you always have to do something. And that was the more of a holistic thing. It was very interesting because I was a chiropractor. I used the word holistic a lot, but I really wasn't living that model. I look at it as deep as I thought I was looking at it. I was still staying in the realm of the spine and the musculoskeletal system and the nervous system, which are obviously important, but there's a lot of other systems in your body too, and they all have to play nice together. And if they don't, then you end up getting disease, sickness, depression, all these sorts of things. Because one of my favorite sayings that I tell people now is you're only as strong and resilient as your weakest and most vulnerable system. And it's not always the painful one.
Yep. That is so well put. Yes. Yeah. And it isn't just, even when you go beyond like musculoskeletal, you're maybe looking at diet. It's not just diet. Diet is foundational, but there's so many other pieces of the puzzle, right? Mindset and toxin exposure and emotional root causes, traumas we've been through, you know. Yeah. But yes, yeah, I think that story is so relatable. Just, you got used to feeling really lousy because it creeps in so slowly and quietly. You almost don't notice until one day you wake up and go, I can't live like this anymore.
Right.
Yeah. How do I untangle this? And, you know, yeah, you can't cure like Hashimoto's, for example, but you could lower your antibodies and feel better. You might be able to put it into remission. You might be able to reclaim some energy or prevent further autoimmune diseases, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, your body is always fighting off everything. That's what it does, right? I mean, your immune system kicks in when it's under threat. It goes after what it needs to, and then it should be able to ricochet back and balance out again. It goes up, it goes down. They call that homeostasis in Western medicine. In Eastern medicine, they call it your chi, right? Your yin and your yang, your balance. But sometimes you can get stuck one way. You get stuck too much one way, stuck another way. So, you know, it's always a management process for your body, right? And it just, what I found is that each person, you have stress in your life, right? And then stressor is a big key factor in what sets these things off. And you can't avoid stress. The only way you're going to avoid stress is, you're dead. And that's not a good option right now, right? So you need stress, because that's how you become stronger and more resilient. It's just the incessant stress, the never ending stress, the inability to adapt to that stress that causes the issue. And it's relentless these days, the stress that we're under, from the physical stress, of course, from our environment, and then also the psychological, emotional one is relentless as well. I mean, just by the nature of social media, which is a fantastic way you can communicate with the world, but it can take you out quick, fast, in a hurry as well, because there's no break in there. And it's interesting when you brought up the emotional one, is that early in my career, I'll be honest with you, I was not at a place where I was ready to accept the role that emotion played in chronic pain and illness. I just dismissed it like a lot of people do, and I bring it up now. Mm-hmm. But I have a different viewpoint on it now, based on my experiences that I've gone through, and then people that I've spoken with. And there's without question in my mind that, the autoimmune diseases and chronic diseases that we have are going to be tied to an emotional component in somebody's life that they sometimes know about, but push aside or try to keep down, or a lot of times the one that they've consciously forgotten about, but subconsciously it's buried in there, because your nervous system never forgets anything all the way back, even though you consciously might have forgotten it. But I can spot those signs now when I know how to look at the body and what the body can tell me when I'm speaking to an individual, because it never lies. It always tells you the truth. You just got to know what to look for. So I jokingly say that everybody has an emotional problem. They just don't know it yet. That's why we're humans and we're not rocks. I mean, so it's a key component that I think is honestly missing in at least the Western medicine approach to disease, because I honestly can't fault Western medicine. They're trying to help, right? They're trying to do the best they can based on the paradigm and the model that they have. But I found that it's not really working well, because they're trying to treat the lifestyle diseases like an infectious disease. So, you've got one thing you can blame, that this is the cause, and let's just fix that guy, and then you should be good. Like, if A happens, let's do B. That's the pill or the medication, right? But there's so many things that go into it, or something that happened decades earlier, that unless you understand how to look at the body, you won't see a causation between that prior event and what's happening now. But I think that with shows like yours and with people learning on their own, this, I guess a good word is grassroots level, human level of this, that, hey, we need you guys to take a look at this a little bit differently, with the approach that we're doing. So.
Yeah, lifestyle diseases and trying to treat them like infectious diseases, that just makes so much sense. You have a great blog post on Stop Chasing Pain, or article, 10 Things to Transform Your Health. And then you added, you took like the sort of common core ones, and you added a lot of your own. So there's like 19 things on this list, like, changing your diet, using herbs and supplements, tuning into your intuition, releasing suppressed emotions, things like that. But you added some really interesting ones, like, of course, putting down your phone, stepping away from technology, which I think is so essential to us as human beings, And one you talked about was drink structured water. Can you tell us about that? What does that mean, structured water?
Sure. Well, that's a pretty powerful thing, honestly. And I teach this in regards to nutrition as well as water. And you may know this when you study nutrition. Just because you're eating something doesn't mean you're absorbing anything that you're eating. So it's like, if nutrients go in, that's a good start. But it really doesn't matter if your cells can't absorb the nutrients. When you have a high state of inflammation in your body, or you have very low stomach acid, which most people do who have an autoimmune disease, or they have a leaky gut, which means the gut barrier has been broken, and then you have a lot of things leak through the gut, and then the lymphatic system attacks it first. So, you lose the ability for your cells to absorb the fundamental nutrients that needs to be able to recover and regenerate, because you're going to stay sick when you have the inability to make new cells that work, period. That's why you stay sick. You have the inability to make new cells that work. And to do that, you need energy. In order to have energy, then you have to have enough oxygen and enough nutrients to do that. It's the same thing with water. I see a lot of people, first of all, most people don't drink enough water. That's number one. But then if they do drink a lot of water, they say, I drink water all the time, but I just feel like I still feel tired or fatigued. Or the most common one is I drink water all the time and I'm going to the bathroom a lot more. So that means they're not absorbing the water, they're peeing it out. So the water actually has to cross the cellular membrane as well. So if you have a problem with what we call the interstitial fluid or the extracellular matrix, that's where all your cells live in, like this bath water, you might say, like a fish tank. Then it becomes toxic in that fluid, and stuff can't cross the cell and outside of the cell, including water. And you are a significant amount of water for your body, then you can't absorb it. But if you start to take structured water, which means you take something in the water itself, and it can be anything. Some of my favorites are a little drop of lemon, a little pinch of pink salt, which works great because most people have adrenal issues and they need a little bit of salt. Or I even do essential oils a lot. I'm a big, huge essential oil guy. You'll put a drop of essential oil in there like that, and you'll take that in, or throw in some fulvic minerals, which is usually I recommend everybody get, which I'll wrap up probably a suggestion at the end, and you drink that. Then people tell me, said, Doc, this is crazy, man. You're like some wizard kind of stuff you told me to do here. Like all of a sudden, like I just feel so much better. I mean, I've got my energy back, because what happens is they're able to absorb it. One of the things that happens with people who are chronically sick all the time is if you have an autoimmune disease, you have inflammation, you have chronic inflammation, period, right? And that means you have systemic inflammation. It's everywhere. And then you lose the ability you have what they call malabsorption. And you need to be able to work your way back towards that. And I see that with supplementation a lot too. Like I see a lot of people go to try to get help from different types of providers, and then they'll go in and say, all right, you need to take these supplements, and they'll leave with like $3,000 worth of supplements or 30 supplements. But they don't have the ability of their body to absorb all that. So they're very, very sensitive, or it's an overload, or they actually have a mixture of, like we were talking about with food. Some food can be good for you now, but not good for you now, even though it's under the category of a good food. And it's the same thing with a supplement. So I see a lot of people taking a supplement that's supposed to be good for inflammation, and it can be, but it might not be good for your particular type, your particular body, at your stage of healing right now. It might be good 3 months later. So even though you're taking the supplement that's good for inflammation, it actually makes you worse from where you are on your healing spectrum right now. So one thing that really hit me a lot with my own illness was protocol is important, but it's the process of the protocol that's even more important. It's when you introduce things in. It's the timing that you introduce things in. It's the dosages that you introduce things in. And that's also the healing phase, but that's also, you have to go back and understand the process that brought the individual to see you in the first place. What's the underlying process that caused them to have, quote unquote, this diagnosis? And what I mean by that is that I never treat one condition the same for everyone, ever, because each person is different. Each person is unique. So I would never do, like if you came and said, Doc, my back hurts, I'm not going to do the same back protocol on client A and do the same one on B just because you have back pain, because it's a different back. You follow? Mm-hmm. And I could do something temporarily to you, but I'm not interested in temporary. I'm interested in long term, right? And that I used to do temporary and do the same protocol. Hey, I felt pretty good for a little while, but it came back. That's because you didn't get to the underlying root process. And I do the same thing with autoimmune disease. When somebody comes in to see me, if they have, say, fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue, I never give them the same protocol, ever. It just depends on what they tell me. the conversation that we had, the examination that I do on them, and then I can determine where we need to start at that standpoint. Mm-hmm. So I call that N equals 1. That's in the world of medicine, N equals 1. That my only test patient that I'm working with is the one standing in front of me. That's the only one that I'm concerned with at the moment. Not even the research of everybody else that people have looked at in the past. I'm like, that's great, but unless my patient was in your research study, I don't really care. I have to go by that person, their emotional experience, not only in their lifetime, but sometimes the day that they come in to see me. Like sometimes I have to change my treatment up based on the day that they had when they came in to see me. Because one day they're relaxed and the next day they just want to tear their hair out. So their nervous system will react differently. And I learned something a long time ago through my work is it's not necessarily your techniques or your skills that are the issue. Is the person's nervous system ready to accept what you're doing to them?
That's interesting.
And I said, that's
wonderful
big.
When we can all get that kind of individualized care.
Right.
You know?
That's what it should be. Well, that's the whole thing. That's what it should be. At least for the things that I'm talking about. If you go in and your arm's hanging off, you're not going to worry about me doing a lymph exam on you. You're going to go in, you're going to get my arm put back on, right? Or if your trauma that you need, where Western medicine is such a gift, without a doubt.
Yes, absolutely.
But this other thing is critical because I don't know if people watching, I know people in your group, but if you look around, we're not getting healthier, we're getting sicker.
Yeah,
we sure are. Yes.
I know you mentioned lymph just a moment ago, and I kind of want to get into it with you because I kind of have some lymph issues myself, and I just want to, can you talk about it a little bit and tell us, how can we tell whether it's an issue for us or not?
Sure. Well, thank you very much. A great question. Well, the lymphatic system, first of all, if nobody knows about it, that's basically one of the detoxifications, kind of purification systems of your body. We call it the sewage system of your body. Anytime that you are going to break down, which you do every day from being alive on this planet, cells break down, cells regenerate. So they have to get rid of the cellular waste. They call it metabolic waste. Stuff goes into a cell, like we said before, with those nutrients. Then they do their thing. They go through the energy cycle called the Krebs cycle, and then they put out the waste. And then the waste has to get out of the environment that the cells live in. Kind of like going to the bathroom in your house, You go in the bathroom, you flush this, it's gone, right? And that's what the lymphatic system does. The lymphatic system is basically like the toilet in your home. It takes out that waste and gets rid of it. But what can happen through many different reasons over the course of somebody's lifetime is that backs up and then the waste just stays there. And it doesn't take much for you to see how that analogy could go horribly wrong inside your home, right? Everything is just awful, right? Well, that's what your body has to live in as well. And then you're very prone to a lot of swelling, a lot of puffiness, a lot of allergies. Lymphatic type issues are very allergic type reactions. And most people know about your lymph when you get the flu or you get sick and the doctor checks up underneath your neck or they press on your lymph nodes. And they're supposed to kick in when you have an infection because they're part of your immune system and they want to attack and kill these antigens, and then you get better, right? But sometimes what can happen is that they become overactive all the time and you have a lymphatic system issue that's always on high alert. So then you get the bloating, you get redness, you get sensitivity to things, you get inflammation around your body to the touch, the skin begins to change, you get varicose veins, spider veins, blotchy. You also get some acne or redness, things like that. And the worst case scenario that people might know of with lymph is, when people have cancer, right? They always tell you that, it can spread through the lymphatic system. That's usually what you hear. And that's true. And that should also be a testament to show you just how all-encompassing that system is, that it goes everywhere in your body. But it's probably the most overlooked, in my clinical opinion, and most important system in the body that nobody ever looks at in relationship to inflammation, recovery, pain, chronic pain. I had a really bad problem with my lymphatic system when I had mine assessed for the first time, and I was a hot mess, honestly. I was like one big giant walking lymph node. And, I had also systemic candida fungal yeast infection. So they usually go hand in hand, those two. So I could not heal because I was in such a state of the inflammation. Then I really couldn't find a lot of resources out there on it. So like I am, I just kind of did everything I could think of to learn about the system and learn from people. And it's really funny. It's like when I reached out to these people, it was almost like some guy who was like, analogy is like, they're doing their thing in some cave and like somebody finally finds them. They're like, oh my goodness, somebody else finally understands. Like they were so happy. So excited that they could share it with someone. But, I really still didn't see any way that that the general population get exposed to it. And that's why I decided, I'm just going to, be the change that you want to see in the world, like Gandhi said. So I just made my own video and my own program and my own workshops, because what happened is when I began to take care of my lymphatic system, I noticed a drastic and huge shift in how I felt, my energy level, my recovery, my brain fog, and things like that. So I wanted to teach the technique that I learned to other people, but it was also educational for me because I'm always a why guy. I'm like, okay, well, why is my lymphatic system, immune system going crazy? So I know it's trying to fight off something. It never just attacks you for no reason. It's trying to fight off something, even though if it thinks that it's you. But I'm also like, why is it trying to attack me? And then so I decided that when my lymphatic issues came back, I had to go further into the immune system. So when you have a lymphatic system issue that seems to always keep coming back, that's going to be more of an immune system issue, and that gets tied into the autoimmune and chronic disease thing as well. So I was ultimately able to get mine significantly reversed based on my program, but also change up some of the nutritional strategies and things that I was doing. And that's probably where I am here today. And first month I did that, honestly, when I got my lymphatic system under control, I lost 30 pounds in 1 month.
Wow.
Because it was mostly fluid and inflammation.
Was there one thing that you did, or was it just a combination of nutrition, supplements, movement? Did you do some exercises? Was there one thing that you feel like really, really helped, or is it just a combination?
No, it's probably one or two things, because I've been a mover off, because two things move lymph primarily: breathing from your diaphragm and moving. They're supposed to move lymph. But when it's really, really inflamed, you have to figure out why it's inflamed. So I had a highly allergic immune system. So we call that a Th2 response, a T helper 2 response from your thymus gland and your immune system. You become very allergic to things. So here's what it was. I was on a gut restoration program when in the beginning, before I really knew a lot, and I was taking all these fermented foods and probiotics, right? And they were making me worse. So they were actually inflaming my system, feeding my candida and my yeast infection, and my lymphatic system was going crazy. So when I tell people now, a lot of times in order for you to get healthy, it's not what you start doing, it's what you stop doing that makes you feel better. And so I just stopped taking those two things. I stopped dairy of all types, cheese, milk, all that sort of stuff. And then I just added one thing different. I added, for my particular immune system, I'm not saying that people listening here should automatically do what I did, because I don't know if you have my type of immune system. I just added in medicinal mushrooms to take. So I removed those and added the mushrooms, and within 3 days, I was a different human, different person.
Wow.
Brain fog, almost like a night and day difference. And then I went from 235 to 205. I haven't been that weight since I was 22 years old. And I've been training in fitness for 35 years. And it wasn't, you can't exercise your way out of an inflammation problem. You actually can make it worse, because you're already under a state of inflammation and stress. And then when you train, you actually cause more inflammation and more stress, and your body just can't handle it at that moment. So after that, was boom, that was the switch I needed to. And I said, I'm going to tell everybody about this, man. This is something that was pretty spectacular. Yeah. And that's why I formed that company, Functional Health Solutions, as well, because that's some of the stuff that we teach. But my thing I want to hit home is that if you give the body what it needs, it'll tell you quick, fast, and in a hurry if you got it right. If you don't give it what it needs, it'll tell you the same answer, which means that you shouldn't have to struggle for months and months and months if you're on the right program. If you don't feel better, and at least, I tell people I give it 30 days as kind of my long-term benchmark, then you need to look at something else. You need to change something up because your body will tell you if you're on the right track. I'm not saying you can fix yourself in 30 days. I'm saying that you should notice that, holy cow, man, this is good. This is really good.
You should feel a lot better. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You just have to tune in and listen to what your body's, the feedback that it's giving you with various inputs. Yeah,
but you know what? What's really a blessing? I mean, I've been through a lot of suffering, like a lot of people listening on here. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but this taught me a lot, like about myself, but also, honestly, to have a lot more empathy for people that I had before, and I didn't realize how many people in the world were suffering from these types of conditions until I had it. It's almost like when you buy a car, you see it everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. The universe kind of opens it up to you, when you can accept that. And I have become so aware of how my body reacts to things now more than before. And I knew that stress was, the big buzzword, right? It's almost like we hear it all the time. It's like cry wolf. We stop really thinking about how important it is, even though it's like monumental.
Right there in front of us.
Yeah, I call it the elusive obvious. It's right in front of you, right? And, the solution starts with you as the individual. But I can tell now when I start to get like worked up, or I'll see something and I'll start to get a little bit maybe angry, and then I'm like, wow, I feel that in my physiology, because how you think changes your biology, right? And then I immediately change my thought process right there. And as soon as I do that, I can feel my body start to rebalance again. Because when you get an autoimmune disease, you become super, super sensitive to things like that, right? And then
that is that'll
teach you a lesson of noticing, because when you get under stress, your immune system will always react the same way for you. So you have like a way that you go. It's like your safety net, your life preserver. So when your life comes at you really, really hard, you'll have a tendency to go down the same safety path, adaptation path. And then when you know that, you can start to do things to then reverse it, because you know which way you're going to go. Then you can start to go the opposite as soon as you start to see the signs. Unfortunately, when we usually get an autoimmune disease, we're so far deep in the quicksand before we see it that, we have a long way to crawl out. But then once you become body aware and attuned to your own emotions, your environment, sometimes maybe you're living in a toxic environment you never noticed before, even a relationship or a career, that if you want to be healthy again, you're going to have to cut that loose. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what you eat, honestly, right? So all those things are kind of all encompassing from there. But
yes.
A lot of life lessons there.
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, there's always those silver linings, right? And it's always nice to meet, other people on the path who have succeeded and who have found their own way and who have sort of untangled that big ball of spaghetti and made miracles happen in their own lives. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us and all the incredible tools that you've created at Stop Chasing Pain. I know you have a lymphatic course out right now. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for the kind words, by the way. So I decided to I first put out a self-help video. It's called Lymphatic Mojo, a Body Aquarium, that anybody can purchase anywhere in the world. It's a streaming video that you can get from my website, and it streams from Vimeo, which is a similar format to YouTube. And once you purchase it, you can watch it and see it the rest of your life. And I'll put that out initially, and it just shows you what the lymph is. It shows you how to assess the lymph on yourself or someone else. And it shows you how to take care of your own lymph or take care of another person's lymph. So I wanted to make it self-help. But then people said, I started to get a lot of testimonials back, and people were really loving it. They said, do you have a course? So I put a 1-day course together, and people really like that. And I'm like, I can make this a 2-day, no problem. So then I launched the 2-day course. And so that's what I do now as well. So I have the video that anybody can get. And then anybody can also come to the 2-day course. I get messages all the time, people saying, Doc, like I'm not like a professional, I'm just a regular everyday person. And I'm like, perfect, because this course is designed for humans and you fit that bill, you're in. And so, because everybody should know about this system and they should be able to take care of themselves. And, people can really get smart and educated when they're not feeling well. And you really have to teach yourself. You're going to be your own best advocate. And I promise you, when you leave that workshop, you'll know more than 99% of most healthcare providers in the world in relationship to your lymph, at least. So that's out. And then I have other ones as well, my movement-based workshop and my functional medicine and movement course. And then, of course, I have a membership site on StopChasingPain.com and my own podcast. So Stop Chasing Pain. It's nice to be on the other side of the mic.
Right.
This one, I appreciate that. But yeah, so most everything people can find if they go to my website, StopChasingPain.com. I'm not hard to find.
Well, this has been fabulous. Feels like we could just keep talking, and we want to leave the listeners with a few takeaways. And I want to know also a little teeny tiny blip about foam rolling. Can you tie that in with some takeaways before we let you go?
Sure. Well, what I try to tell people is that, one of the things that in life we're designed to do is move, right? I mean, movement is life. And so I usually try to tell people that just to try to move more of yourself more often in more ways and more environments. And the easiest one is the more environments one. But put yourself into places you don't normally go. Like one of the biggest ones is try outside. That's a good start, put yourself in the sun, go out in nature, and nature heals. Nature is non-judgmental. Take your shoes and your socks off, put it on the earth, absorb some of the energy and electrons from the earth. They call that grounding. Or even go in water, particularly the ocean. That's great. One of the best things you can do is go outside and watch the sunrise. And then that's really therapeutically healing for people. And foam rolling is a good one that can work for people. Sometimes you just need to be a little bit careful because foam rolling should never hurt. And then usually if you put pressure on tissue and you roll it and it hurts, that's an indication that one, there's probably inflammation in the tissue, and you might want to do some lymphatic work first, but you want to make the roller softer, not as hard, because what they're learning with pain now is that when you inflict pain on yourself during a type of therapy, the nervous system actually shuts down and you pull into survival mode, fight, flight, freeze, freak out. So you put yourself under more stress as well. And when you have pain, even though it doesn't seem like a lot of pain, even though it's it feels so good type of pain, your body falls back on compensations and protective mechanisms because it's under threat. And you don't really have a lot of long-term help from it because you fall back on bad habits to do that. And they're actually saying that foam rolling doesn't change the actual structure of the tissue that much. They feel they're influencing the brain more than anything because of the physical touch on the skin. So I'm going to give you one of the biggest tips I think your listeners will love. One of the ways that you can significantly reduce pain and discomfort is to lighten up the touch that you do on somebody. You do what's called feather light force or cotton ball light, like a painter's brush. That stimulates what they call, I'm going to throw some big ones at you fast, superficial cutaneous free nerve endings type C fibers that decrease pain. What that means in a nutshell for the average human is if you take like a paintbrush and you paint the area of pain and you go above it and below it, at least a foot, and you do that a couple times a day, you will significantly decrease the level of pain that you're experiencing in 24 hours.
Okay.
Amazing.
Very interesting. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't go hard, you don't go deep. That's counterintuitive, but that's why it works.
Right. It's not no pain, no gain.
That's right.
Yeah, gentle.
Not when it
Less
comes
pain
to pain.
for a lot of gain, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, I don't want it to be over.
Me neither.
It went really fast. I know.
It did go fast. It did.
All right. I'll come back again.
Okay.
Fascinating. Please do. Yes. It's been such a pleasure having you here, Perry. Thank you again for joining us. And thanks to all of you listening for joining us for another episode of Thyroid Refresh TV, where we give you the information and inspiration you need to make the best choices for your health. To receive your free Thyroid Thrivers grocery guide, you can visit us at thyroidrefresh.com. And to learn more about Thyroid 30, our revolutionary 30-day wellness adventure, go to thyroidrefresh.com/thyroid30. You do have the power to heal, and we have the tools. And like Perry's t-shirt says, if you can see it, you are stronger than you think. So true.
Yes.
And if you've enjoyed this podcast, we would like you to help us continue and would like to help you and like to help us continue inspiring and empowering thyroid patients worldwide. We would love a review on iTunes. It would make our day, and you are what makes this community the amazing resource that it is. We so appreciate your listenership and your support. We're Dana and Jenny, wishing you the best of health. See you next time. Thanks again, guys.